planting up a bit more of my forest garden, but before I do that I need to dig in as much organic matter as possible. Now, a forest garden is a garden that mimics the natural ecosystem of a forest edge, and it's made up of trees, shrubs and perennials, which are all largely edible. Once a forest garden is up and running, it's self-sustaining in that it will feed itself. And the way it does this is it uses certain plants to feed other plants. And how this happens is through the soil. If you imagine that this piece of Hessian is just underneath the soil layer, then what you find is within the first foot of soil there is this very delicate ecosystem made up of microorganisms, of fungi, of little insects that, when undisturbed, will take food from one plant and deliver it to other plants. And the reason this can happen is because it's never dug over and it's not disturbed in any way, much like it would be in a natural forest. So I'm digging in lots of good organic matter, getting rid of any drainage issues, any perennial weeds, and then once I've got this established, I don't intend to do any digging, and more importantly, I'm going to try and keep off the soil as much as possible. I also won't remove any of the leaves that fall from any of the trees, because that's helping to build up this rich and wonderful soil layer. So in order for the garden to feed itself, you need to include certain sort of plants. The most important of these are the nitrogen fixers, which are part of the pea family. Now, this is a shrub called Elaeagnus umbellata. Its common name is the autumn olive, because in autumn it has this wonderful round fruit that makes the best possible jam. But even better, it's got nitrogen-fixing nodules on its roots. So it takes atmospheric nitrogen, fixes it in the soil, feeds itself, but through my food web under the soil, that incredibly important network of fungi and microorganisms, it will also feed a great part of the rest of the garden. The other group you need are the dynamic accumulators. These are plants with incredibly deep roots that can take minerals and nutrients from deep down in the soil and bring them to the surface. And chiefly, these are comfrey and sorrel plants. And this comfrey is called Bocking 14. So that looks small, but will eventually become quite big. But if you didn't want to put comfrey in your garden, you could put sorrel. It does exactly the same thing as comfrey, but the good thing about it is it's edible. This is French sorrel. It's lemony, tastes delicious, and as you can see, you've got green stuff very early on in the year. So it's a very good salad crop because it'll give you year-round leaves. And you can start to see what I mean about the deep roots. Even in this pot you can see. Here you go. And I'm just going to split this plant up because I've got quite a lot here. And the point about this is plant feeds plant. And I'm planting it on the south side so that the tree doesn't shade it out, because sorrel does like sun. Now, the last thing that I want to plant today is this blackcurrant. Now, forest gardening is all about layers. You have your top layer, which is the fruit trees. You have a shrub layer, represented by things like the blackcurrant. You have a herbaceous perennial layer, such as the sorrel. And then below that, I'm going to have some ground cover. But mostly, forest gardening is about eating. And blackcurrants are something that I truly love to eat. Blackcurrants, unlike red currants, need a lot of sun. And I want to put it fairly close to the edge of the path, because I want to be able to pick without having to stand on the soil. And the last thing I need to do is to be very cruel to be kind. The point about blackcurrants is in the first year you have to concentrate everything down into the roots. So although it looks lovely, I do need to cut it back. There you go. I've got my layers, I've got my feeding system, and I've got something lovely to eat.